Hey everybody, this is Games Plus James and welcome back to our 2D platformer tutorial here in Unity 5. Woo! So if you didn't see my short little video I made, it should go up the same day as this video. Just looking at the slight few changes that have taken place between the older version of Unity and the brand new Unity 5 version. If if you're in the middle of upgrading to that, there's a few changes you might want to be aware of. The game gets slightly broken, but perfectly fine, easy to fix. So just check out that video if you haven't already. And we're going to continue on with today's episode. And today we're going to look at adding knockback to our player when he gets hit. Because at the moment, when he walks into an enemy, it kind of looks a bit bland. If we go over here when the enemy starts moving, we walk into him, we just kind of push back and forward with him. I don't know. If we try walk into him, we can push him, but that's no good. We want to get knocked back when we get hit. Something like that. And we also want different ways to deal with the enemy. For example, we're going to do if you jump on the enemy and will hurt him that way, or if you have a little weapon you can stab him with. So we're going to need a couple more enemies wandering around though. It's kind of boring just having one enemy guy. So we're going to take our enemy, we're going to change from enemy 1 to just enemy. Go to our prefabs folder here, we're going to drag the enemy in to make a little prefab out of him. So now we can just drag a couple more into the level, pop them in there, and we hit play, and those guys will wander around just like our original enemy does. We see them. See, there he goes. Woo! Oh, don't hurt me. The only problem is if they walk along. Oh no! We're stuck. We walked into each other. So we want them to turn around when they face each other. Or alternatively, actually, you know what probably makes even more sense? We don't want them to turn around when they face into each other. We want enemies not to collide with themselves. So what we actually need to do first is give them a special layer. So we'll just go to our we go to our prefab of enemy, and we go to layers here. We don't have an enemy category set up. So if we go to add layer, all we have to do is just add in enemy there, then go back here, and we'll just select enemy. We'll change whatever are inside him. We should be just like just the 2 points for detecting the thing. Now that'll have changed all these guys back here. You can see layer enemy 1, enemy 2. These guys are all enemy. And then in our project settings, we go to physics 2D, and we'll scroll down to enemy, and we'll see enemy down the bottom here lines up with enemy at the top. So we'll untick that. So what that means is enemy and any two objects in the enemy layer, if they collide with each other, they'll just ignore any collision and they'll just walk through each other. So we'll see that here now. When we hit play, we go back in. Once that guy bounces off the wall and he goes and meets his friend, they just go walk by each other, which is perfect. Because we don't need our enemies colliding into each other. They're gentlemen enemies. They know how to walk around each other. So that's perfect. So what we're going to start off with is dealing with this kind of knockback that we want to give to the player. And basically we need this to happen on the player himself. We could try and do it at the point where our hurt player on contact. It will involve this script, but we could make it go from there and say add a force to the player. But the way we're handling movement is we're taking the movement directly from any keys that are pressed and making that set to the speed. So what we actually want to do is kind of override that slightly. So what we're going to do is create a couple of little components up here. Or components, variables is actually the word I'm looking for. So we'll start off with public float. We'll just say knockback, and a public float knockback count. So the knockback will hold the amount of force that we're going to apply to the player when he gets knocked back, and our knockback count will be that'll be our countdown thing. I will actually put another one above our knockback count. We'll do public float knockback length, we'll call it. So the knockback length will be how long the player will be knocked back for in terms of time, and the knockback count we'll set it to that amount of time and then minus it until it goes to 0, for example. And we also want we'll want to know whether the player should be knocked back to the left or knocked back to the right, depending on where the enemy is that's knocking against us. So we'll just create a public bool knock from, oh, we'll do a capital F, knock from right. Just to see if, so we'll say like if the enemy's on the right, then we want to be knocked to the left, and if the enemy's on the left, we want to be knocked to the right, which is relatively simple. So down here we have our movement code, which is handling, this is the bit that's handling whether our player is moving left to right. And we want to kind of say, we don't want, when our player is knocked back, we don't want whoever's controlling them to be able to move them still. Because once you're knocked back in the air, you should be knocked back for a second and then the player can move. So what we're going to do is, we'll say if knockback count is less than or equal to 0, then you can do this bit here. So what that'll be is, say we have a knockback count and the player gets hit, we'll set the knockback count to say, I don't know, half a second or whatever, and then time will tick down, and then once it hits 0 again, then you'll be able to move the player again. And by default, it'll be 0 anyway. So you'll always be able to move the player until you get knocked. So then we'll say, so then if that's not true, we'll say else. I want to just put a couple of curly brackets here. So the next thing we want to check is, okay, so if it's not knocked back, then we know that the enemy is after knocking into us, but we need to know which side is the enemy knocking into us from. So we'll say if knock from right, which is our Boolean thing to determine if the enemy is on the right or the left. So if knock from right is true, that means that our enemy is on our right. So then if our enemy is on our right, then we want to knock our player to the left. So we'll go my rigid body 2D dot velocity is equal to new vector 2, and we have our knockback, our amount of knockback, which is just knockback, but we don't want to add a positive knockback. We want to say minus, because we want to move our player to the left if the enemy is on the right. So we go minus knockback, and we also want the same amount of force to knock him up into the air as well. So there you go, that's perfect. So if knockback, if the enemy is on the right, then we'll do our velocity, will go to the left. So then obviously if not knock from right, then we'll just have the exact same line of code, and we'll just paste it in there, but instead of minus knockback, we'll just have knockback, because then if the enemy's on the left, then we'll knock him to the right, which is perfect. And then the final thing we want to do here is, we know that our knockback count is greater than 0, so we want to make sure that the knockback count is always going downwards. So we'll say knockback count minus equals time dot delta time. Cool. So now obviously if we save this, we don't have anything that's setting any knockback, but we can test it out just by hitting play here. Oh, actually, you know what will be useful if we actually had some values put into the player. So we'll unpause or unplay, unplay. Some people would call that stop, but whatever. So we'll set our knockback. We'll set this to say 10, and the length of our knockback we'll set to, we'll just set it to 0.2 of a second. I don't know if that'll be enough, or we'll see. So if we hit play, once it finishes, there we go. So obviously nothing's happening just yet. And what we're going to do is, when the player gets hit, we're going to use the hurt player on contact script, and we're going to add something that'll will make the knockback count equal to knockback length. So here we're just going to say 0.2. Oh, you see that knocked them up in the air just like that, and it looked like it knocked them up a good amount as well. So we'll say 0.2 again. Oh, we have to set this one to 0.2. Sorry. Yeah, that's a nice little knock amount. So we'll just change knock from right here to test this. So again, we'll say 0.2. Oh, he gets knocked back to the left. That's perfect. That seems like a good amount of knock to me. I've said knock too many times here now. So now we'll go to our hurt player on contact script, and we will open that up, unless I already have it open. Oh, I do, of course. So here we're going to, again, this is going to be nice and simple and keep it nice and easy. We already know within this little bit here that that the enemy is contacting the player. So what we're going to do is create a variable of player here, and to determine what the player is, because this is what we're going to be able to access the script that has the knockback in it. So we'll just say player is equal to other.get component, and then we'll find the player controller script. So that'll make player equal to the player will be equal to the player controller script that is attached to the player that we have going. So then it's very simple. Once that's found, then you can just go player dot knockback count is equal to player dot knockback length, and then we want to determine whether we should knock the player to the left or the right. So we have our knockback or knock from right variable, which is exactly what we want to do. And very simply, we just need to decide whether the player, or in this case the other, is on the left of the enemy or on the right. So it's very simple to do that also. We'll just go if other.transform.x. So that means the x position of the other that the enemy is colliding with. If other.transformer.x is less than transform, no, not capital T, small t, transform, if I could spell, yes, transform, here we go, transform dot position dot x, and I don't know why I just said transform dot x here, because it should be transform dot position dot x. There we go. So basically, if the other thing is less, if the other object's x is less than the enemy object's x, then that means that the other is on the left. So if that's true, then player dot knock from right is equal to true. Perfect. And if not, then we'll just say else, because if that's not the case, then otherwise we have to set player dot knock from right is equal to false. So now that should be everything that we need to handle our knockback on our player. So if we go back into Unity and we hit play, and once everything compiles again, and we walk over here, walk into our enemy, oh no, he knocked us back. We just let him walk into us, bam, bam, bam. Oh no, look, we're losing all our health, and then we're dead. But our knockback is working perfectly. And of course, you can fiddle around with however much knockback is going on there, however much you kind of think is appropriate. And the reason for putting the knockback within the player script is, rather than just having it in the hurt player on contact thing, you'd have to have a specific, you'd have to choose a knockback value every single time that you create another object that you wanted to hurt the player. So it's much easier to just put it on the player, then every time he gets hit, no matter what, he always has a little default little amount that he's knocked back by. So let's actually just try reducing it slightly and see how it feels. Hit play again. And we go over here. Boop. There we go. That actually feels pretty good. Oh no. But there we go. That's the basis of adding a little knockback. But those enemies are annoying us too much now. They're knocking us back too much. We don't want them doing that the whole time. We want to be able to take our vengeance on them. So what we're going to do is give ourselves the ability to jump on their heads and squash them. So at the moment, on our enemies, we'll just go to this guy here. If we look, we created a little trigger zone around him. But that's going to cause some issues. If we want to jump on his head, then we're just going to end up hurting ourselves every time. So what we're going to do on him is go to his box collider, and we'll get the one that is a trigger. And what we're going to do is grab the size and just shrink it down like that, because that's still going to hurt the player when he walks into him as much as if he was as if this thing was up or down, as much as if it was bigger. Sorry. It's still going to hurt the player. It's still going to be able to detect the player just as well. But now when if the player lands on top of him, he won't necessarily be able to hurt the player every single time, which is exactly what we want. And what we're going to do on our player object, if we go to him here, what we're going to do with him is we're going to add another object onto him that is going to be just below his feet, and that's going to hurt the enemies whenever we land on him. So we're going to go game object, create empty child. We'll call this head stomper. We want to add a box collider 2D to him. Box collider 2D. And we don't want it to be anywhere near that big. We want to squash the size down just like that. And what we're going to do is drag that down so it's just below his feet there. So then when he lands on an enemy with this box, hopefully when we create a script, this little box will hurt the enemy. So obviously at the moment now, if we go hit play and walk over here, oh well, look at that, sir. I didn't make it a trigger, so you have to make sure and remember to make it a trigger. But if we jump on top at the moment, oh god, all it's doing is the enemy is hurting us. That's no good to us at all. So we unplay this and make sure trigger is selected. So now we need to write a little script to attach to this object that will hurt the enemies whenever we land on top of them. And again, much like all the scripts we've been making, it's all very straightforward and very simple. So we're just going to create C# script, and we'll call this one, instead of hurt player on contact, we'll call it hurt enemy. Oh, if we could spell enemy on contact. Now, perfect. So we'll just open this up here, and this is going to only have a few little simple bits and pieces to it that'll hopefully just make it all nice and easy for us. So we'll have to have an amount of damage to give. So we'll have a public int damage to give. And the other thing we'll need is actually no, that's all we need for the moment. So we'll just leave the start thing alone and leave our update alone, and we're going to go void on trigger enter 2D collider 2D other, and put our squiggly little brackets in. So now all this is going to be is if other.tag is equal to enemy, then other.get component enemy health manager. So it'll find the enemy health manager that's attached to our enemy objects, and we'll just, using that script, we'll just go give damage, and we'll put in the damage to give, save that, pop back in here, and we'll make sure on our head stomper script that we add that script that we just created. So once I finish compiling, there we go. So that was our hurt enemy on contact. And we'll say 3 because we want to, these enemies have 3 health, so we just want to be able to stomp on them and get rid of them straight away. So if we hit play now, we should be able to, boom, there we go, enemy is destroyed. Boom. This guy, boom. Perfect, so that's what we want. But if we just replay again, we're not really getting any kind of good feedback when we do that. We're just kind of smashing down through them. It'd be a bit nicer if we could kind of bounce on their heads a little bit. Whoops, there we go. I nearly lost track of that guy altogether. There we go, stomping on him, stomping on the spikes. Yeah, so we want to be able to have a little bit of a effect to happen when we bounce on our enemies, not when we hit our enemies, to make it look like we're bouncing on them, basically. So what we're going to do here is simply, we have this box that's always going to be attached to the player, so we can have a set amount that we're able to bounce the player by. So that's what we want to do. So we'll go public float bounce on enemy. And to be able to move the player, we need to be accessing our rigid body. So we'll go private rigid body 2D my rigid body 2D. Now the thing is, if we go back in here, so this script is attached to our head stomper, and we don't want to get the rigid body on the head stomper because we don't have a rigid body on that. That's not doing anything. We have a rigid body on the player, which isn't the same object that the script is attached to. So if we go back in here, what we want to do is find the rigid body on the parent object. So we'll go here, my rigid body 2D is equal to, rather than just going get component rigid body 2D, what we'll do here is we'll go transform dot parent. So what that'll do, it'll find the parent object, and then we're going to go get components. So we know where our parent object is. So it's going to go, okay, parent object on you, we want to get that component and find the rigid body 2D. Close these brackets and add some normal brackets. So now we have the rigid body of the player rather than of our little stomp on head object. So now that we have that rigid body, it's very easy for us to just go my rigid body 2D dot velocity is equal to new vector 2, and we're not going to change the x value at all because we want the player to be able to still move along if they're bouncing on an enemy or anything. So my rigid body 2D dot velocity dot x, we don't want to change that, but what we do want to change is our y velocity to make it bounce in the air. So here we're just going to say bounce on enemy, and we'll close that and we'll hit that button there. So now we'll save, we'll pop back into the game, and once this compiles here down in the corner, we will hit play, and once it's all run, here we go. Oh, I forgot to jump there for a second. But we'll, oh, why is he kind of slowly falling there? Weird. He's kind of getting stuck in the air. I don't know why it's doing that now. Also, we didn't set a value for our bounce on enemy, so that wouldn't actually do anything. We hit play here. Huh. Very strange. I don't know what's going on here. That shouldn't be happening at all. Oh, because I didn't put it within this. Ah, that's our problem. So we didn't make any squiggly brackets after our if statement. So we need to put them in there, and we'll just pop this over for the sake of tidiness. Yes, that was a strange thing to do. So I was always trying to give you the bounce value onto the rigid body of the player, which isn't really what we want to happen. So now when we press play, this time when we bounce on top of our enemy, oh, it wasn't a very big bounce there. So let's actually make it like 20. Let's try that. Come here enemy, like jump on your head. So now, whoa, that's way too much. Let's bring it back down to 10. Go over here and bang. That's just enough of a bounce, I think. But again, you can fiddle with the bounce amount and see how it feels yourself. There was one little thing that I noticed here when I killed myself a little while ago. Look, we were getting our knockback amount. Now it does it almost looks like he's jumping out of the respawn point, which maybe you might want to keep that in. I don't know. Personally, I'm not too enamored by it, but we don't want him to be getting knocked back when he comes out of the portal. So once he dies, which is handled in our level manager script, so we'll open our level manager back in here, which I apparently already have open. So in here we're going to, on our player, we're just going to say that the knockback amount, or not knockback, the knockback count is equal to 0. So then it knows, okay, we're not adding any more knockbacks to him. So very simple, we're just going to go player.knockback count is equal to 0. Save that, go back into the game, and now when we hit play here, we should be all sorted and all running nicely and smoothly, and we're able to jump on our enemies and able to get killed without any errors occurring. So boom, kill that guy. There we go. So once we're killed, come back alive, and there's nothing trying to push us around all over the place. So there you go. That's our basics of jumping on our enemies and killing them and adding a little knockback effect to the player. Next time out, we're going to take a look at adding a weapon to our player, a handheld weapon. For example, a little sword to stab at people or something like that. And just another way for us to take care and take out our enemy friends. So yes, thanks for watching. I will be back soon with more tutorial goodness. And everybody, stay having fun. Thanks for watching this episode, and if you'd like to see just how some of the concepts we've covered can be brought together into a fully fledged game, then head to portalnauts.com and check out the demo for my game that I've been working on for the last while. It uses a lot of the concepts we've covered so far in the series, as well as other things that we're going to cover in the future. So if you want to get a feel for where we're going and what kind of things you can make with these with the basics of Unity, head over there, try out the game for yourself, and let me know what you think of it, of course. And the best place to let me know is to head to Twitter @GamesPlusJames. Say hi, I'm always there, ready to say hello and do stupid things. But also, if you'd like to see some of the game being worked on and developed in real time, head to twitch.tv/GamesPlusJames, where I regularly stream development of the game, and you can get to see behind the scenes of how things all work. So, head there, say hello, and I'll see you all in the near future.